Hack the planet.
What is up, everybody? Welcome, welcome. Welcome to our Wednesday TCM stream with myself, Andrew, or some of you might know me as Malware Cube, as I go by on the internet. And I'm one of TCM's content creators. I'm sure some of you recognize me by now. Been on a few streams in the past little bit. And it looks like, just like the last stream, we have Arubius as first. So at least the last stream I hosted, I remember he was first, as he usually is. So well done, well done. And yes, we have a print stream for little old you. We are doing a Blue Team oriented AMA, Ask Me Anything / we're going to do a box in a little bit, but just we'll get some people in here, hang out, ask some questions, and yeah, we'll hop over to do a Blue Team Labs online box, which I'll get to in a second. How's everyone doing? You like turtles? I like turtles too. I was thinking of that zombie kid last week. That's a good Halloween costume, but unfortunately, I didn't think of it in time. Yeah, looks like we have some people joining in. While we wait a little bit for some questions or whatever, I will do a bit of housekeeping. Some announcements I should probably make before we jump in. Let me just share my screen. Oh, there we go. We have a banner there. I'm not sure if I did that or not, but yes, that's exactly what I was going to talk about. Actually, we have the Black Friday sale. So actually an incredible sale. We have 50% off the first Academy payment with code GOBBLE24, and we also save 20% on certifications and live training. So that's actually quite generous. So I would hop on that if you were waiting for a sale. It's probably the last one of the year, I imagine we'll do. So yeah, that's great. The other thing too is we just kind of we're starting to prepare for the SOC Level 1 live training, which is going to be hosted, it looks like, in January. So this is going to be kind of a 4-day jam-packed kind of instructor-led training, the closest of what maybe we'd refer to as a boot camp, although I hate that word, but it's going to be kind of following a similar structure to the SOC course, since it's kind of geared towards those level 1 or level 2 analysts, and also anyone aspiring to become a security or SOC analyst. So we're going to jump into a lot of fun topics, as you can see here in the objectives. We also have the curriculum here down at the bottom, so you can see what we're going to be covering at a rough point for each day. And also kind of as a side effect to that, it's going to be kind of that guardrail to teach you everything you need to pass the PJSA. So we kind of get both benefits there. But again, it's going to be that private cohort. We're going to have all the labs hosted in the cloud. So no local virtualization is going to be required there, which I know is kind of a barrier for some people, which also gives us a lot more opportunity to kind of build out the lab network more and look at some more malware and real attacks and stuff. So there's also going to be, you get additional training or you get additional lab access afterwards, because it's going to be a capstone challenge and everything like that. So I'm looking forward to that in the new year. So just thought I would plug that while we have it kind of building up. And again, don't forget the Black Friday sale. But that's it for me. Let's see if we have any questions before we hop into this box here? Can you tell me where is course for free in cybersecurity from zero? Well, we have a number of like long form video lessons on the Academy YouTube channel. So the one that you might be on here if you're commenting from YouTube. So we have like we just released actually the kind of ethical hacker roadmap guideline for 2025. So I would probably start there, completely free. It'll sort of get you on the road to a lot of low barriers to entry training. And we also have the free tier on the Academy. So that's what I would recommend as well, which we're going to be adding to. But we have a lot of great stuff to get you started in the building up those core fundamentals. Can I buy that course or must have subscription for it? If you purchase a certification, it comes with all the courses that are kind of geared towards preparing you for that certification. But otherwise, we have the subscription model for the Academy. Jeff K says, what did I miss? Nothing yet, actually. Just talking about the Black Friday sale at TCM. And we're going to jump into a Blue Team defensive-oriented ransomware memory analysis box, it looks like. Will there be more advanced versions of the course in CERT? Yes, if you're talking about the SOC course, yes. It's currently what I'm kind of working on now, aside from kind of splitting my time between preparing for this live training and also building up a SOC 201, which is going to be that more advanced security analyst or SOC analyst, even a bit of security engineering a bit course, which is going to be, more of an advanced focus and probably some more prerequisites to take that one. So I'm really looking forward to that because we really want to build out some more advanced stuff, especially on the blue side now that we have the foundations. Just completed help desk. Yeah, great course. Planning to buy a subscription. What should I do next? I'm in blue team. Well, if you're in the blue team, we have a few courses. I mean, personally, I would suggest if you want to go down that kind of security analyst, SOC analyst route, obviously the SOC 101 course. Let me just pull it up. I'm really not trying to shill it here, but it kind of seems like it'll fit your what you're looking for here. Let me find the SOC 101 course. Oh, let me just Google it. We can go through the curriculum a bit, and I'll show you what basically we cover. So everything from the fundamentals of security operations. We talk about phishing analysis, network traffic analysis, security monitoring. We get into network traffic detections as well. Same on the endpoint. We basically do a huge deep dive into the endpoint and trying to understand all those components. Also log analysis, working with SIMs, threat intelligence, digital forensics, so that DFIR kind of stuff, and incident response. So that would be my recommendation. We also have the detection engineering course if you're looking for something more on the engineering side after you maybe wrap up the SOC course, or if you feel like you're prepared now, that would be a great recommendation as well. Is there better beef than Berta beef? I don't think I've ever had that. I'm assuming it's Alberta kind of. Are they known for their beef? I guess so. No, I'm a pretty bad Canadian. I've never been west of, I guess, where I am now, and I'm not very far west in the country. Roadmap to become expert in blue team? Well, that's a tough question, these roadmap questions. I know we get them quite a lot, and I personally feel like I'm not sure if I can answer it for everyone. It really depends on where you're starting from, right? Or it depends on your background, depends on what foundations you have. Like, have you worked in IT before? You don't necessarily need to, but some of these foundations kind of go into what that hill is going to look like for you to climb, and what, I guess, obstacles are going to be in your way. So I know we typically recommend like building up the core foundations, kind of like an A+ equivalent, kind of understanding computer systems, hardware, software, and then sort of building up maybe a network foundation as well, and then moving on to some basic security plus kind of stuff. That would honestly get you way more than you need to go, and then you'll be more than prepared to take something like the SOC 101 if you want to go down the SOC analyst route, or start going into more more advanced or specialized topics. I know a lot of people like to build that kind of foundation up first before they start moving into more advanced stuff. My biggest bounty so far, I'm not a bug bounty enthusiast, so I would say $0 from. I mean, I've reported stuff to companies before, but haven't made a dime doing it. It was more so just out of the goodness of my my heart, or as an obligation for the company I worked for. So I guess maybe salary wise, if you consider that a bounty. Which search or projects can help an entry-level job in SOC as an analyst? Yeah, I mean, PJSA, we just recently released. I know it's a very new cert, so if you're thinking about, recognition and such, I mean, it's I think at this point it's barely been out for a month. So, but there's also things like, Blue Team Level 1, CYSA Plus, even though it's a bit more of or a less practical focus, but still, we actually have a blog that I wrote that goes over a number of certs that you can look for on the blue side. All right, I think I want to introduce the challenge, or the CTF, or the box or whatever we're going to work on today. It's a bit different. We're not going to be doing hacking today. We're going to be doing investigations and defending. So what I will do, share my screen again. And this is Blue Team Labs Online. So this is a great platform, basically just focused on Blue Team kind of stuff. So we have things like investigations. We have different things like network traffic analysis, endpoint analysis, memory analysis, which we're going to be doing today. It's really cool. So if we hop over to challenges, so you can register an account at blueteamlabs.online for free. And there are a bunch of free content that we can look into. It's kind of like a Try Hack Me or Hack the Box, the Sherlocks. But in this case, pretty much just focused on Blue Team stuff. And I really like this platform. They have a lot of quick and easy kind of challenges to sort of get that practice in. It's kind of like a cyber range kind of thing. And the one that I found was interesting, we want to kind of sort on the retired ones, because probably shouldn't cover anything that's not retired at this point. And where is it? The memory analysis ransomware challenge. So this is the one that kind of piqued my interest. I did a stream a few weeks back, or maybe a month back, where we looked at a ransomware investigation using Splunk. And that was the boss of the SOC challenge, which you can find if you just go back in our archive of live streams. But these are really fun to do, right? So in this case, we get an artifact in the form of a memory dump. And then we have a scenario here that we want to look through and then answer questions. I kind of want to focus this more as like a workshop kind of live investigation, instead of maybe just going through question by question, because it's not like a boot to root kind of hacking challenge where it's binary, either you get the user flag or you don't, or you get the root flag or you don't. In this case, with a lot of Blue Team challenges, you're going to have these kind of guiding questions, or these cyber range type questions that sort of guide you through an investigation, because there's a lot more variables, obviously, that can go into it. But in this case, I don't want to just, stick to answering each question, moving on. I think some people fall into a trap of just answering the question and not really knowing what that means, or building up, the bigger picture around it. So I just want to focus just on doing an investigation, not even looking at the questions, and then at the end, we can go back and answer anything that we missed. And that's kind of what we look for in the PJSA, because, you're going to have some guiding questions, but at the end of the day, your report is what matters, because it's what you document, and it's what you can actually communicate and support your verdict is going to be a lot more important and applicable in the real world than just answering, what was the parent process ID. Obviously, that can be a useful indicator, but we want to understand what actually is going on. Yes, put you in the mindset of instant response, 100%. And so, I guess let's kind of start from the beginning here. And so if we're doing memory analysis, one of the tools I love to use is volatility. And volatility is a very powerful memory analysis tool. There's a bunch out there, stuff like Redline and some others, but it's Python based, so it's very applicable. It's very ubiquitous and kind of easy to use and implement. And it has a ton of different options and plugins and features. So that's what we're going to be diving into today to perform this. And I don't have it installed on this machine, so that's what I'll walk through first. So I debated pulling up a VM that already has it installed. And I think on Kali Linux it comes pre-installed. A lot of forensic focused Linux distributions as well will already have it installed, but in our case we just need to run through a quick installation. It's not that hard. There's many ways to install it. This is just a quick way I know how to do it. So let's update our packages. So again, if you do want to follow along, that is the memory analysis ransomware on Blue Team Labs Online. I think the link has been going around in chat if you want to set it up yourself. All right, cool. And now I want to make sure I have Python 3 pip. So cool. And then once we have that, we can clone the volatility 3 repository. And I'm not sure how long this challenge is going to take. If I go back to here, I mean, to be honest, just glancing at this can take like 5 minutes. So I kind of want to drag this out and make sure we understand what we're doing at each step, right? So kind of like a workshop, kind of lunch and learn kind of thing, instead of just running through a challenge, which can be fun, but in this case. So we have the volatility 3 repository here. Again, if you already have this installed, then you don't need to worry about it. But actually, let's make a directory in the Blue Team Labs Online directory. We'll just call it, I spelled that wrong, maker mem analysis. Cool. Let's clone that. And then we can cd right into volatility. I'm using a new keyboard, and so I'm gonna make plenty of typos today. Just be forewarned. Is this a free thing to do? Yes, it is. So if you head to blueteamlabs.online, is a cyber range that has a lot of free blue team oriented CTF challenges or things, kind of like Try Hack Me. So yeah, it's great. It's a great platform. Yeah, there's other ones too. So there's Cyber Defenders, Let's Defend, and also again, Try Hack Me has their own kind of blue team pass, and Hack the Box has the Sherlock investigation. So ton of blue team content out there. Back when I started, there was there was like nothing. So it's awesome to see. All right, so now that we're in volatility, I want to make sure I also have a virtual environment to start installing all these packages, because pretty sure if I just try to install this on my VM, I'm just going to break stuff. So I want to make sure I have the virtual environment here that we can stand up. Nice, you learned how to solder and built your first keyboard. That's cool. I've been switching a bunch of different keyboards, trying to find one that that I enjoy using for a long period of time. Yeah, I'm very, very picky, I guess, when it comes to keyboards. All right, so we have volatility installed, or not installed, but we have the repository cloned, and we have our virtual environment to stand up. Again, I just want to have a virtual environment so I can kind of isolate the dependencies that we need to install volatility, because there are quite a few, and if there's any conflicts, if you ever dealt with like Python dependency conflicts, it's a pain. I just close my VM and burn it at that point. So let's create a virtual environment. So we can just call the module of VNV that we just installed, and I'll just call it again VENV. Should just take a second. Are these streams released on schedule? Yeah, we do them every Wednesday at around this time. So at least in my time zone, it's noon, 12:21. So it's pretty much when we do them, and they last about an hour, 2 hours sometimes. Whereas Alex is not here today. He is enjoying life. Meanwhile, I'm sitting in front of a terminal. Alrighty. So what we can do now it just sourced that virtual environment. So we're just going to run the binary of activate. There we go. You can see here we have the virtual environment set up. And that's just kind of like muscle memory at this point. I'm trying to figure out how to do that. But now we're good. Now we can install dependencies and we don't need to worry about conflicting with our, host machine. Kind of, in a way, like Dockerizing our little environment here, but not really. So now we can run pip install, and we can just include all the requirements from that text file. And you can see it's going to install a bunch of stuff. We have things like Yara for Python, some capstone stuff, a bunch of stuff. All right. Oh, it's still going. There we go. So we should be good. And to test, just run Python 3. We are in the volatility directory. We can move it to user bin or opt or something if we wanted to. But in this case, I'm just going to run it straight from the directory. Doesn't really matter. We can just run help to make sure. There we go. We're pulling back. We go to the top there. We're running volatility 3, right? So there's pretty much you're going to run into either volatility 2, which is kind of deprecated or a bit older, and now we're kind of moving on to volatility 3. So there's quite a few plugin differentials between the two and different kind of ways you do things, but we'll probably cover that today. And then we have the version number of 211. So cool. Is the lab beginner friendly? Yeah, I think it is, especially if you follow along. We're pretty much going to walk through it step by step. It's kind of the way I prefer to do things. Alrighty. So, what do we do now? We have volatility installed. I guess we should get the artifact, right? So, if we head back to Blue Team Labs Online, again, let me just zoom in here. We have our scenario here, so maybe that's where we'll start. We have an account executive called the SOC earlier and sounds very flustered and angry. He can't access any files on his computer and keeps receiving a pop-up stating his files have been, oh no, encrypted. All right, so we disconnected the computer from the network. Nice. We isolated the machine and extracted live memory dumps from the machine, right? And we started analyzing it. There you go, with volatility. Cool. So that's what we're going to do. And here's the memory file, right? So we have a memory dump file. It's password protected. And it's not too big, actually. Sometimes if you're dealing with memory files, they can be pretty large, like multiple gigabytes. Think about how much RAM a computer has. A lot of stuff runs in memory, right? So I'm just going to copy the link here. You can just download it or whatever. But I don't want to open Sublime Text. I want to open my terminal and just back out of here into our base directory. And I'm just going to wget that zip file. Should take a second. I'm a bit confused on why you made that VNV. Right, so VNV is a Python module that stands for virtual environment. And it's a way for us to isolate our kind of, I guess you could think, host machine and all the Python dependencies that our host machine has. And we're isolating it just for this project, right? So I just have it in this mem analysis directory. And so it's kind of like, again, a containerization of what Python dependencies and versions that we want to include or that we want to use, right? So if I just cat out, if I go into volatility, we have the requirements.txt file, right? And this is all of the version numbers and different dependencies that we need to install in order to run volatility on our machine, right? So we have Yara Python, specifically the version of 3.8.0. And so if our host machine was running a different version of Yara Python, we would run into some potential conflicts, right? So it's just a way for us to isolate our dependencies and make sure there's no conflicts, and we can kind of contain everything inside this kind of folder for us. So I hope that makes sense. Your main OS is Ubuntu. Yeah, I just like it. It's easy, lightweight. I mean, not really lightweight, but you can make it lightweight and, I don't know, just kind of reliable. I like keeping things basic. All right. What were we doing? Yeah, so we just copied, or we just grabbed that zip file, again, from the challenge itself. And I just want to unzip it, right? And there's a password of the zip file, so we need to, what is it, capital P, and the password is BTLO, and then just provide the name of that file. Should be good. There we go. So we've extracted this folder here. We have a text file and the infected.virtualmemory or vmem file, which contains our actual memory dump. So let me clean this up. So I don't like the name of that directory. It's kind of messy. So let's move everything back, and then we can just remove. There we go. All right, so let's cat out btlo.txt. Okay, so this is a free challenge, kind of just a disclaimer kind of thing. Cool. And then we also have infected.vmem, right? So this is going to be pretty much what we're working with here for the remainder of this challenge. Regarding the virtual, it's good practice. I mean, it helps. Again, it helps you avoid conflict. So if I'm just working with something quick, I'll probably just do it. You know, if I have a project focus, yeah, I mean, it's super lightweight and easy to do and easy to set up. So pretty much just good practice to do. How do we get a memory dumps from our own computer? So I don't know if you mean from the challenge here, so you can just download the file. If you mean actually extracting and like acquiring a memory dump from your computer, well, you can use something like FTK Imager. I think Volatility, you can do it as well. But there are a bunch of tools out there that allow you to get that sort of live dump of a file. If you're using VirtualBox, you can actually use the VirtualBox command line, like the manager on your host machine, to actually dump out the memory from a live running VM like I have here. So there's a ton of ways to do that. I suspect that's how they did it with this setting up this challenge, because again, we have a vmem file, meaning it's a virtual memory, so probably some sort of virtual machine. Yeah, so I would look up FTK Imager, just an easy way to do it. But again, there are a bunch. All right, so what we can do now, we're pretty much ready to go, right? We have everything set up, we have everything extracted. It's usually a good idea to make sure that we're working with the right file, right? So something, again, if we're talking about best practice, one thing I like to do is just grab the hash of our memory file. And again, depending on the size, this could take a little bit, but I want to take this hash value, right, and make sure that I compare it with things like the chain of custody or, the hash from the ticket or the file from the ticket, to sort of make sure that we are maintaining that integrity, right? So, you know, if we're doing any kind of digital forensic investigation, or, you know, if we have to deal with any kind of law enforcement, again, we want to have that chain of custody form. We want to have, you know, hash values like this matched and documented. What is the key object in this lab? Well, we are in a scenario where there's been ransomware deployed on a machine, and we're trying to sort of investigate it and figure out what actually happened, what were the processes, kind of thing, that kind of stuff. So that's what we're going to do now. And so I think we're ready to go. So one thing I like to do first in Volatility, you know, when we think about performing memory analysis, we typically have a few goal takeaways, at least in my methodology. And if you think about it, whether we're performing forensics on a live machine, like if we were to, you know, perform forensics on this live VM, or if we have, you know, a memory capture like this, like a offline or cold VM or machine, you know, there's obviously going to be some differences, but the general methodology is going to be pretty similar. And the core things we want to look at are like network connections, right? So maybe we're trying to tie network connections to processes. We're trying to see if there's any active or listening ports, that kind of thing. Any indicators in the form of IPs, again, port numbers, or any associated processes, right? So the second thing is we want to look at processes. So any process IDs and the images associated with them, any command line invocations, the parent-child relationships, right? So we're going to look at process trees and stuff like that, and also a lot of registry information, right? So we can look at any basically configuration from a running system or an offline system, you know, as terms to what configurations were going on in the registry. And that's probably what we'll look at today. I don't know if there's any questions here about the registry, but I do want to look at some stuff. All right, so let's move on here. We're going to be here all day if I keep talking. So the first thing we probably want to do is figure out what machine we're looking at here, right? So I can just call volatility again, so vol.py, and I'm going to provide it the file of, it was infected.vmem, I think. And then the first plugin I want to look at is just grab info about the plugin, right? So that's going to be, at least in Volatility 3, it's going to be windows.info. All of our pretty much plugins are going to start with Windows. In Volatility 2, it was a bit different. And I think this sort of challenge was built upon Volatility 2, probably based on when it was released. And so this is kind of the syntax of volatility too, where you need to actually provide a profile of the machine that you're scanning or that you're analyzing. In this case, we have Windows 7 Service Pack 1 with x86. So that's probably what we're going to find with running that windows.info plugin. Again, we could also do like linux.info or mac.info, depending, we want to obviously know what kind of machine we're looking at, what operating system, and then we can start digging into things like this, right? So we can look at the major or minor version, and if we were to just look up this number here, maybe Windows 7601. Yeah, so we have Windows 7 build 7601. That's kind of how we can enumerate the system. We can see things like, what else? The number of processors. We can see the system time, so what time was the memory actually captured. So we have 2021 here, so obviously good for timeline analysis purposes. And then just other version information, right? There's a lot of useful stuff we can do with the info command. What version of Ubuntu? I believe 22.04. Alrighty. Cool. Yeah, just checking if there's any pressing things. So next, again, if we're just doing, I kind of want to focus this on an investigation standpoint rather than just answering the questions. So what I would typically do first is look for that low-hanging fruit in the form of network connections, which kind of in reality isn't always going to be a quick win for us. We might have to dive into processes first and kind of do that grueling process of looking at other events or logs and kind of, tracing things back. But if the system that we're analyzing was making any kind of network connections to like a C2 server or contacting a domain while it was executing, or even just listening or setting up a listener on an unstandard port kind of thing, we can find that low-hanging fruit stuff fairly quickly. And often we think of baselining, right? So we look at what is normal on our systems, and that's a whole topic on its own, and it's not as easy as it sounds, but we can kind of perform the same kind of checks that we would on a live system on a memory capture, right? And so you're probably thinking we could use something like netstat to look at active network connections on our system. And well, we can do that with volatility. And to do that, instead of windows.info, well, it's fittingly named windows.netstat. And hopefully this works. But again, it's going to dive into all of those TCP and UDP connections and listening ports and stuff and provide us a lot of information into what, potential things we might want to look at. And so if I just zoom out here, we see a ton of results, right? And this isn't super, it is kind of, if we start digging into this, it's pretty manageable. This is not too bad at all. But what we can do is I want to look at these established connections first, maybe the listening ports at some point, but you can see we have things like the local address. So we have, in this case, the IP address of our machine. We have, those local or ephemeral ports, and then the foreign address, right? So what IP address was it contacting? So what I could do is just run this again. Actually, what I'll do, I'll run it again, but I'll pipe it out to a file just so we don't have to keep running it if we want to, mess with the output. So I'll just call it infected.netstat.txt. So I'm just going to run the same thing again, but pipe it over to a file. Alex looks so different without his beard. Yeah, so does Live Overflow. All right, so should have that file now. So we have infected.netstat.txt. There we go. So what I want to do is just take this output, and I just want to grab, this keyboard is going to kill me. I just want to grab the established connections, right? So I'll just search for established. There we go. So that's a lot more manageable, right? We are missing some potentially useful information, but again, we're just focusing right now on which connections were active at the time of capture. And so we have things like our localhost connecting back to localhost, right? So we have taskservice.exe. We have the process ID or the PID numbers. It looks to be the destination port and as well as the local port. And so interestingly, it looks like we have the same process for at least 4 of these, and then we have servicehost.exe connected on port 80. So this task hservice.exe is a little interesting. I'm not sure what that is. So what I can do, usually what I do when I see a binary name or something that I'm not familiar with, I'll just Google the name before I start looking into additional information or start diving deeper. But look at that. Immediately, we have WannaCry malware profile. So that's not a good sign if you Google something running on a system and immediately you get WannaCry as a result. So we have a Mandiant threat report, I assume, that we can look through. This might be useful. There we go. So we have some indicators here. We have, is that it? Task? No, it was task H service. All right, is that in here? Oh, there we go. So we have a decryptor file. Okay, so that's not a good sign. But again, that was pretty quick, right? I didn't know we were going to catch that so quick. But, so I'm immediately suspicious of this process, right? Because it's connecting on multiple connections, right? So we have this 51 address on port 9000, this 192 address on port 9001. So this could be, yeah, interesting. And then let's rule out this one. So the service host, you're commonly going to see a lot of service host executables when you're looking at a system for the Windows service. But a lot of malware likes to hide and sort of name itself servicehost.exe, right? So we can look into this in a second, which we'll probably do. But this is going to be a great resource for us, I imagine, because these kind of threat reports, these threat intel reports, are like the best ways to sort of understand what attacks look like in the real world, right? Like you see a lot of stuff on different socials or LinkedIn and stuff, like talking about I totally cross-site scripted into your mainframe kind of stuff. But these are what attacks look like, this kind of stuff. Like it's going to persist. We have some registry keys. It's going to name itself a certain way. So we have random strings and stuff. So again, this is the best way to understand what attacks look like in real life. These kind of things. So there's also like the DEFR report and also Unit 42 from Palo Alto Networks. So you can just look up those on Google and you'll find a ton of interesting reports from actual malware, from actual attacks. All right, so yeah, so let's rule out that servicehost.exe and confirm whether or not this is also something we should be concerned with. And there are a bunch of ways we can do that. So maybe I'll ask the chat, are there any ways that might get us a bit farther? Like there's obviously plenty that we can do, but just as a quick check for that low-hanging fruit, are there any obvious indicators specifically to the service host process that we can check for? Is there any, that low-hanging fruit? It's on you guys now. There's two things that come to mind, at least for me. So two answers I'm looking for, but again, there's multiple ways to do things, especially with investigations. I think I'm a bit behind, so probably by the time they start coming in, we'll be moved on. So, PID, okay, yeah, the process ID could be a thing, because obviously we can take that process ID, we can look at processes running on the system. The file path, yeah, good. So we can look at what executable was actually running. Where was it running from? Was it running from the actual system root, or was it running from like Bill's downloads folder, right? So typically, when we look at that, we can look at things in volatility like the command line, or the command line. So if I run, let's go back to our volatility command. And instead of windows.net stat, I want to look at the command line plugin, and this is going to allow us to, again, let me pin that. What Drask was saying here, we can look at the file path, so where it was actually executed from, and we can also look at what command line invocations run with the service host command. And I didn't see the answer here, but there's also another indicator specifically with the command line invocation of service host that we can look at as well. So that's probably what we'll find. So again, so if I just run the help, I think we can provide the process ID. Yeah, so that's what we'll do. And we'll provide the PID, in this case, of 896. There we go. So we can see it was called from the root directory, right? Windows System 32, servicehost.exe. That's a good sign. It's not foolproof, but it's a good sign. And we have the K parameter here pointing to the service group of network service. And so when you look at any service host processes on a machine, they all should have this K parameter here pointing to a service group. If it doesn't, it's most likely something malicious, or at least something you want to look into, because they all need to point, just the way that services work in Windows is that they need to point to a service group. And we could deep dive into that, but I would probably extend this even longer. But yeah, that's one indicator to know. And maybe what we could do also, if I just run windows.pslist, I can grep out for servicehost.exe. Actually, instead of pslist, let's do command line. We should pull back all of these service host executables on the system. You can see they all have that TACK-K parameter here, so that's good. And they're all executing from the same location. All right, so a little bit less concern about that service host, but now I'm interested in, where was it? These guys here, the task-hservice.exe, right? So we have the process ID of 2968. So, all right, let's return back to this. Can you upload this video on YouTube? Yeah, it'll be on YouTube. If you go under the live tab under our the TCM Academy YouTube page, it'll be there. All right. So, again, I mentioned we have some indicators here, right? We have this IP address that's apparently connecting to. So one thing we could do is just do a whois lookup. No, not this site. I like using the domain tools website, even though especially because I'm using Linux as my user agent, it's going to ask me for a CAPTCHA, which is very annoying. And we can figure out information about what, that our system was connecting to. In this case, it looks like OVH cloud hosting. So if you look up OVH SIS, software as a service, I think, we have the cloud computing service by OVH, which you'll find that attackers and malware likes to leverage OVH in the wild. Again, it's kind of that popular, or it's a popular like cloud hosting VPS kind of thing. So they can get scalable infrastructure for things like their command and control servers, and also it's kind of anonymous. It can be set up in that way, so that's concerning as well, right? Why is the system connecting on port 9000 or whatever to that address, right? And what port was it on? Yeah, 9000. So let's look at everything just in case, because we were looking at established connections, right? Let's also look at the listening ports. But again, I'm not really concerned with all this noise here. I kind of want to, we've casted a wide net and then we found something interesting. So I want to, go down that path. And so what I'll do is cat out that report again, or that netstat report, and then just grep for, what was it? task-hservice.exe, make sure we didn't miss anything. And we did, right? So we have 950 as a listening port on our machine, which is interesting. If you see a non-standard port listening for some reason, that's especially from a process that we found was suspicious, that's something we want to look into. So one thing we could do maybe is look at, again, I'm going to probably return to this threat report because it looks like we're dealing with WannaCry in this case. So a lot of these same indicators, even things like the hash values, maybe not, but things like the some of these general indicators like domain level indicators, IP, they might be in this report here. So if I just search for 9050, yeah, we have some results. So we can see, in this case, it downloads Tor or something, and then it binds to a TCP socket on the local host, which we saw, and connects to port 9050 on the local host. Right, so yeah, there we go. Task-hservice.exe, it checks if that exists. Interesting. So yeah, we're definitely dealing with WannaCry here, right? So there we go. And again, we can look up all of these different IPs if we wanted to. We can keep going down the rabbit hole, but I think we found something at least that will help us, help us continue our investigation. So we looked at network. Let's look at processes now. Specifically, again, interested in this one. Figure out more information about it. So what we can do instead of running command line, we can run ps list. That's just like running ps in Linux or task list in Windows or something. Basically pull back all of the active processes on the system. So that's what we're going to do here. If I run that, we'll probably get a lot of output. So I probably want to filter it based on the PID, right, of 2968. And let's see what we find. Yeah, so we have the process ID, we have the parent process ID, which I want to jump to in a second. Let's also look at the command line invocation as well. We can see where this actually executed from. Give us some information maybe. Okay, so it ran from task data, tor, taskhost.exe. Interesting. I think I saw that in the report too. Yeah, right there. Okay, so again, another indication. We're kind of tracing things backwards, figuring out where it executed from. So why don't we try looking at the parent process ID now, right? So we can change the PID to that PPID or the parent process ID, see what that executed from. And what do we get? Nothing. Interesting. Okay. So let's kind of make sense of this. Let me open up. I'm really dragging this out, but I think because this is kind of memory analysis stuff, it can get pretty high level, or kind of, it can get kind of quick. So let's try to break this down a bit. So we have our infected machine, right? And we have, what is it? We figured out that the host address or the IP address of this machine was most likely this 192 address here, because that was the local address listed in netstat. So we can just put that there. Hopefully you can see that. And so this was the victim, right? And we noticed it was reaching out to a server hosting OVH Cloud, and we had this IP address here. This is probably going to take forever, but and that was on port 9000, right? And we also had another one. Don't really need to worry about that, but there was another server that was reaching out to as well. And on the process side, we had that task hservice.exe, right? So let me make this a bit bigger. I don't know if this is helpful at all, but kind of how I work through things mentally, sort of keep track of everything. We had the PID, the process ID of 2968, and the parent process ID of 2924. And that was executing out of that task data directory, right? Under tor. Okay, so that's pretty much where we're at now. And so what we can do now is look at the process tree, right? Because we tried to figure out what called this process, but we couldn't find it. I'm also interested in what this process might have spawned itself. So what I can do, we have the windows.pstree command. If I just run this, we're going to get a lot of output. Because it's going to go basically building out that entire tree for every process running on the system. So we get a lot of stuff, and it's kind of hard to deal with. Whoa, wanted a decryptor right there. Okay, so we're onto something. But what I want to do probably is I can run pstree and provide the process ID of 2968 again, just for that one that we originally found. Yeah, we can see it's not spawning anything. Okay. So if we go up one to the parent of 2924, I think we just check this. Yeah, we get nothing. Okay. What if I just try running pstree? No, that won't work. So let's just try. Yeah, that wanted decryptor one was interesting. It looks like it was spawned from this strange process as well. It looks like it spawned out of user's hacker desktop. Yeah, Max found that. So I don't know if this was a user account that they created and it's kind of verbose in that way, but typically you wouldn't see a user account called hacker. So maybe a bit of suspended belief here, but it looks like there might have been an account set up to execute this malware. And execute as this process. And if we look at the asterisk here, it's kind of how the PS tree builds out the graphical list. It was immediately spawned by this process. We have one a decryptor. And then kind of on its own, we have that task service.exe. Okay, so now we have some more processes to look at. So we have this one. And then one a decryptor. So again, that doesn't look very good at all. But let me try searching for this in our report. No, looks like we don't get anything. However, we do want to make note of those PIDs, right? So what I can do, and I also want to see how they were executed as well. So process ID, what is it? 2732. We have, oh no, that was the parent process. Hold on. We have 2968. We have 3968. And 2732. Okay. Awesome. Now let's look at the process tree for these PIDs as well. There we go. Okay, so we're kind of starting to piece things together here, right? So we have, it looks like we have explore.exe spawning this weird OR4QT executable, which then spawned the wanna decryptor, as we can see based on the kind of level here. And then again, we have task H service on its own. So what does this tell us from a kind of user behavior or maybe a user action level? If we see explore.exe spawning something like this from the desktop, what might that tell us about how the file was actually executed? Specifically, if we see explore instead of something like PowerShell or cmd.exe. Well, it would tell us that, well, maybe we can draw it out. So again, we have our infected machine. Let me just close this off. We have our infected machine. Maybe I'll just draw a little Windows 7 background. Right, we have our desktop. And on our desktop, we have a bunch of files, right? It looks like because we have explore.exe executing the malware, it looks like it was on the desktop and then a user or something double clicked on it because again, it invoked that explore process. And now we have explore.exe that spawned that task, or not that task, but that weirdly randomly named process, which then spawned one a decryptor, right? Yeah, double clicked, user opened. Yeah, you guys got it. If we saw something like command.exe, it would mean, a command process was spawned or something like PowerShell. But this is kind of the tree that we've just developed. Like if this was the malware, user double clicks on it, it spawns explore.exe, which then runs that executable, which seems to have then spawned the wanna decryptor. All right, and I know I'm really like breaking this down, but I just thought it would be more interesting that way. All right. So what I want to do now is make sure we didn't miss anything. So along with PS list and in PS tree, we also have PS scan. And the way it works is it's kind of a more comprehensive way to list processes on the system or from a memory capture. And the way it works, I'm not entirely sure. It looks at specific process blocks in the actual data structure of the memory. So, a bit low level or high level, whatever. But it's a way for us to get a better visual of potential processes that might have been unlinked or terminated at the expense of it taking a bit longer. So what I can do is run PS scan to, again, do that entire scan. But because I don't want to pull back everything, I'm going to grep out specifically for these process IDs here. And the way I can do that was with just a bit of regex. So I can separate those with a pipe and make sure to back out that pipe, and that should work. So again, I'm pulling back everything related to those three processes. Make sure we didn't miss anything. There we go. And we did miss something. taskdl.exe, which was a child process of this one here. Interesting. So let's return to the drawing board. So we had explore.exe, right? Whoops. We can make that black. Explore.exe, which spawned that weird or4q blah blah blah.exe, which then spawned the @wannadecryptor. Whatever, spelling doesn't matter. But it looks like we have an orphan process here, right? Or not an orphan process, but maybe one that was unlinked or terminated because, again, it was spawned from the same... I'm going to keep saying this name, this weird one, but it's not in the actual, PS list output. It's not until we looked at unlinked processes or terminated processes that we actually found it. So we can put this maybe as like a light gray because it was also a child, but it's not really active, right? So if that makes sense. Cool. So again, what I've been doing is just looking any of these executable names and trying to compare it based off our threat intelligence. And it looks like, yeah, this is another indicator here. Support tool for removing temporary files. Interesting. In this case, we have the WannaCry extension file deletion tool. Interesting. Okay. So now let's get to some maybe funner stuff. Let's try to pull out these executables from memory, right? Let's actually pull out the binaries and then perform some more analysis on them, right? Because if you think about it, the memory capture has everything we need in it, right? It has the actual executables inside of them, and we can use volatility to pull out the actual files, which is really interesting and really fun to do. And it's also really easy to do. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep these process IDs, and also what was, shoot, I have to run that again. I forgot. This is why documentation is important. Now I have to wait to pull it back again. Because there was that additional process ID that I want to try to grab. Of 4060. Okay. So we have 2968, 4060, 3968. Oh, also this one. So apparently there was a duplicate WannaDecryptor that was also unlinked. So I want to grab all these and make sure we have everything that we can possibly have. And then instead of PS3, I'm going to run PSList, I think. Or no. Well, we can run PSScan. I think it also has the ability to do that. Let's check. So I just run TAC-H for the help. Yeah, and we can dump the list of processes. So let's do that. We have the PID there. That's fine. We can set the output directory. So I think we do that right before the plugin. So I can set that to just in the current directory. And then I want to add the dump option. There we go. So now we're going to extract those files directly from memory, and we'll have them on our machine, or any ones that it can extract. There we go, right? So you can see we have these dump files now that have been extracted. Looks like we had some errors. So, okay, that one that was unlinked, and also that duplicate one that was unlinked. So I guess we couldn't extract those. But we have this dump file here from the task-H service, along with this weird executable here. So we run LL. Oh, okay, so we have 3. Interesting. So what we can do is run file against them, right? Make sure they're actually executables, which we can see here, right? So we have the actual file output looking at the file headers. We can see PE32 executable for all of these 3 here. What we can also do, double check that, again, just as another way. We can run XXD to look at the hex output of something like this first one here, pipe it over the head, and we should see the file header there, which we can see as MZ. We also see this string. This program cannot be run in DOS mode. Just basic checks that you can do to make sure a file is an actual executable. So now that we have these files, we can run something like SHA-256 sum or MD5 sum, whatever. I usually do I usually do SHA-256, but we can also just grab the MD5 hash values in the same way. Because if we go back, we have a bunch of hashes here that we might want to, manually check against if we really wanted to. So we can just run a Control F, paste that in. Looks like we're not getting a match, which isn't too surprising. I mean, if you think about how hash values kind of work, they're very volatile. No pun intended. You know, 1 bit in the file is just going to change the hash completely. So they're not always the best indicators, but we also can use something like VirusTotal, right? We don't just need to rely on this. So I can paste in these hashes here. There we go. Pretty high ratio. Seeing a lot of red. Seeing a lot of WannaCry, right? So it looks like that file in particular is definitely malicious, right? I mean, we've pretty much already discovered it, but again, we found out which network connection was running. We linked that to a process, and then we extracted that process out of memory and looked at things like its hash. We can also, you know, submit this if we wanted to something like Joe Sandbox or hybrid analysis, right? Anything. We can do static analysis if you want to do some actual malware analysis on a machine. I keep opening Sublime Text. So we could do that with any of these hashes. I assume they're all going to be malicious. We could also just look at the strings too, right? I'm not going to get into malware analysis here. It's really not my forte, but we could just do some static things like looking at the strings, pipe that over to less. And so it's going to pull out any ASCII or like user human readable strings that were contained in that executable, which again, it's compiled executable. So we're going to be pretty limited here. But we can see things like Microsoft Enhanced RSA and AES cryptographic provider. We can see a command that's being run. Whoa. It's running task.exe. We have a file, t.wannacry. It's running iCalcs to grant permissions. Interesting. Yeah, that's that's interesting. What about the other one? What about task service? Yeah, good shout. Floss is really good for this. I didn't know it was provided by Mandia, but yeah, it's in Flare VM by default. It's a really good. It's more effective than what I'm doing here. I just kind of want to showcase the general process of some potential things we could do. Let's try the second one, just to see if we find anything interesting. I'm not sure, but oh, there we go. Interesting. A lot of like you know, command output or something that we're finding in here. Some network connections references. Is this the Tor thing that we identified? It could be. Yeah, made a circuit. That's interesting. This might just be like a binary from related to Tor or something. Auth challenge. Yeah, cool. What about the last one? The Wanna Decryptor. That one might have some interesting information. What is that? 3.9. Oh yeah, there we go. So we can actually see the message from that Wanna Decryptor, right? So we can see all your files have been decrypted, right? So it's kind of message that you see when you run the decryptor tool on your desktop. Pay now if you want to decrypt your files. Interesting. We see it's running. We have a command here that was baked into the file. We have some links to how to pay Bitcoin. A Google search here, how to buy Bitcoin, Wikipedia address. Interesting. That's funny. Send this much worth of Bitcoin. So it's subbing something in there to the address. Where's the address? Oh, is it this? Is this the Bitcoin address? I'm just going to Google that. Yeah, it is. We found the Bitcoin address. That's funny. Yeah, there it is. Oh, no. Is that in here? Yeah. Malware then chooses these random Bitcoin addresses, it looks like. Interesting. All right. I think we pretty much done it. I also want to look at the registry, right? Because typically, I mean, if I remember WannaCry, there's going to be some persistence. I'm just going to search. Yeah, persistence mechanism. It creates the following two registry run keys to ensure persistence. Okay, so we can check that pretty easily with volatility, actually. And we can do that with... oh, there's also a service. So we can potentially run the service. We can enumerate the services pretty simply. Let's try that. Affected.vmem, and let's run windows.services, I think it is. Maybe not. I don't think it's available. Okay, that's fine. It might be due to the version or the OS build, I'm not sure. But we can also do it manually. We can look in the registry. So we can pull back the hive list, so we can look at all of the different registry hives that we have access to, right? So we have things like the system hive, hardware default. We have ntuser.dat for the hacker user, so that could be interesting. Software, security SAM. So let's try to enumerate the services, right? And the way we can do that, at least in Windows 7, I think. Services, location, Windows 7. Oh, registry. I can't spell. Okay, yeah, so current control set services. Yeah, that should be it. And so the current control set is kind of this volatile set of registry configuration when the system's running. And Windows usually stores it into either control set 001 or control set 002. And I think 001 is typically the one that's in use or the last boot. And 002 is kind of like the last known good configuration. So we should probably query 001 in that case. And the way we can do that is with print key. So with print key, we can pull back a registry key or a kind of like a set of keys or subkeys. And we need to provide, I think, what is it? Offset. Yeah. So in this case, what do we want here? System, right? Yeah. So I'll provide offset of that string there for the actual, memory hive offset. And then we want to pull back the key of, and in quotes here, under current control set 001. Or no, sorry, control set, right? And then under services, I think. No. Oh, I forgot 2 dashes. No. Yeah. What am I doing? There we go. I think that's working. Oh, we're pulling back a ton of stuff. Yeah, we're pulling back every service, basically, on the system, as expected. What we can do is pipe this over to a file, I guess, and we can start digging through it. Let's call it infected.services.vmem. Okay, we have that. Yeah. Okay, so let's cat out infected.services.vmem. There we go. And let's try to extract just the service names, and maybe we can, run through them quicker to see if we can find that one or enumerate them better. We can use awk or cut. Probably awk's better. And then we just need to print out with awk. How do you do this? $. Yeah, let's test that. I think that's it. Okay, so we're pulling back the first column. And this is just going to be trial and error until I find the actual column that has the service name. There we go. That's it. And so let's just run a sort. Let's run a unique. Then, just for good measure, another sort. Okay, pulling back all the services in a cleaner output. How long or how many services do we have here? Pull back the lines. Whoops. Okay, we still have 429. What we can do is grep out for the one that it says. Oh, service name. Okay, let's just search for this string. Let's grep out for... No, nothing. Okay, guess not. Let's look for the run entries now. I guess the service wasn't installed or whatever. But we can look at this, right? So we can look at, try to find this actual run entry that runs the this malicious process. Oops. So kind of similar methodology here. Instead of this, though, let's run windows.registry hive list. All right, and so for this, we want to grab under the software hive, right? So that's going to be this one. And so let me go way back up to that original command. Yeah, there we go. And then change the offset to the software hive, and then change the actual path to, just for good measure, Microsoft Windows current version under run, right? It's a very common location for these run entries or these persistence mechanisms to be, right? So it's going to be software, Microsoft Windows current version under run. Is that it? No. Software. Maybe not. Maybe we're not pulling it back. Okay, guess not. Maybe we don't need the offset in this case because we're actually specifying software there. Maybe that was just a overlook on my end. No, we need the offset. No, we don't. Let's just try this. There we go. Now we're getting something. But I'm not seeing. Oh, yes, I am. There it is. It's right here. Yeah, it's under the hacker user. With this random string here as the name of the entry. And it's calling, again, that tasks CHE executable. Right, so is this an indicator for us in this report? No, but it doesn't really specify the name. Yeah, random for the name. Yeah, so that's it. So we found the actual persistence mechanism, at least one of them for WannaCry. Cool. And it's very common, I'll say, to see a name kind of like, where was it? This one here, where it's just random characters, right? It's a lot harder to write a signature that looks for this string rather than like a specific name like WannaCry or something, at least trying to obfuscate as a malicious or a benign task or something. You'll commonly see stuff like that. And I think that's it. I mean, pretty much as we can do now, I think we've more than probably solved this challenge at this point. So let's try to figure this out. Yeah, so this is using volatility too. We already did that. What is the name of the suspicious process? Well, we found 4, right? It could be any of them. What was it? Task H service.exe? No. Is it just wanna decryptor? That's like the main one. Yeah, I guess so. Or the most obvious one. What is the parent process ID for the suspicious process? Okay, we got to figure that out again. Should have documented, but we did find the answer, definitely. Windows.pslist. Let's just grep out for, we'll find it. Just need to grab the process ID for wanted decryptor, parent process of 2732. That should be it. There we go. What is the initial malicious executable that created this process? Well, that's going to be whatever the parent process was. So PID. Now we can speed run this. There we go. It's this random name here. Yep. If you drill down on the suspicious PID, find the process used to delete files. Oh, we found that. That was the DL one, right? Task DL or something. Whoops. Yeah. File deletion tool. So it's this one, which we already found. Whoops. Find the path where the malicious file was first executed. That was in the hacker user, right? Whoops. Users, hacker. Actually, let's figure that out. I'm probably going to typo something. We just need to run PS tree for that, probably. Yeah, C users, hacker, desktop. Oh no, we just need to change the name. Yeah, here it is. Cool. Can you identify what ransomware it is? Yes, it's WannaCry. What is the file name for the file with the ransomware public key that was used to encrypt the private key? Oh, interesting. We did not cover that with the .eky extension. That's probably in the decryptor process, though. So we're pretty much there. If there is a public key. So we have the process ID of the wanted decryptor. I mean, that's my best guess if we're, if it's a decryptor rather than some of the other processes we found. But the file name of the file. So we could look at the handles of this process to kind of look at the open files associated with the process. So that's probably what they're looking for here. So we can just run Windows handles and provide that process ID. So again, the handles are going to be those like open files or resources associated with it. However, I'm not seeing it. Let me zoom out. No, maybe it's not the decryptor. What was the other one? Or the parent, yeah. 2732. Maybe it is that one. All right, let's try that. Actually, before we do that, let's just grep for that EKY extension. We should find it pretty quick. Yep, there it is. So it's under users, hacker, desktop, and then we have the actual file name of that ransomware public key. Interesting. There we go. We completed the challenge. And we also went a bit above and beyond, right? We looked at the registry. We actually pulled the files out of memory. So I think they could have included some of that registry stuff in here for the persistence. That would have been cool. But nevertheless, I hope that was interesting. That was pretty fun. We went pretty in depth there and kind of drew it out a little bit. I mean, literally drew it out a little bit, but that's kind of the way my brain works. So hopefully that makes sense. And I hope you found that interesting and useful. If you do want some more practice on doing like memory analysis and maybe understanding the different plugins and some additional plugins as well, we do actually, I just recently added a section in the SOC 101 course that covers basically just volatility in general, and we go into actual examples. There's a challenge as well. So kind of just like this, but again, we look at the registry, we look at pulling out files and some other interesting things as well. So just thought it would be relevant to do a challenge just because just last week I added that to the course. So the kind of stuff you're in for if you go down that deeper route in the SOC 101 course. So I hope you enjoyed that. Looks like a lot of people did. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Great demo. Thanks again. Yeah, thank you. I really want to do some more. If it's not Blue Team Labs Online, I want to do the maybe Let's Defend stuff or Cyber Defenders. There's a lot of stuff. Even Try Hack Me has a lot of great Blue Team stuff. So definitely, if you enjoyed this, we'll do some more. Definitely. Let's see if we have any questions before we wrap up. And yeah, just went over an hour today. Not bad. I thought this was going to be either very quick or very long. Like the Splunk one was like 2 hours. Can never tell with investigations. All right, let me catch up on some of these here. I'm a security analyst. I think you mean level 1, yeah. Should I wait for SOC 201? It's entirely up to you. I mean, if you think about it, if you have a subscription to the Academy, you have access to all the courses, right? So what I would suggest is because the SOC 101 is kind of geared, it's kind of two-headed in the fact that it's geared to both aspiring analysts and also people who have been in the field either as a level 1 or level 2 to kind of fill in those gaps. I think it would still be useful. But you can kind of decide yourself, right? So I would go through the curriculum. If you just go to the Academy website and look at the SOC 101 course, you can basically see a list of every lesson that's covered, every topic, every module, and figure out if it's something that you do in your day-to-day that you're kind of an expert at, or if it's something that you might want to brush up a bit more on. It's a very wide variety of a course, right? So there's a lot of things. Like back when I was an analyst, I didn't really do forensic kind of stuff as some of my jobs, but depending on where you go and what company you work at, it's useful to have some of those skills. So it does kind of catch that wide net, but it also goes very deep into each section as well. So. When I used to install Volatility 3, used to get an error for certain plugins. Yeah, it can be a little tricky. That's kind of why I do the virtual environment, just to make sure that whatever issue I have, it's not a, it's not an issue with the dependencies or anything, but it can be a little tricky still, depending on what, what version you're running, what operating system, stuff like that. So there are some variables there. And so I would just try to figure out what the issue says, right? If it says a plugin's missing, you might need to, maybe it's not in the version you have installed, or maybe you're missing a dependency or something like that. Do coding affect, maybe another way to word this is how important is coding in programming for Blue Team? It can be very important. Depends on what kind of focus your role kind of has. I think being really fluent in the, in a bash terminal, for example, also with PowerShell or in the command line, that's going to get you really far. Even just simple things that we were doing today. Oops, that's not it. Yeah. Some of the simple things we were doing today, like just cutting up different things or using awk to sort a lot of output together. I know some people are asking, like, how common is it that you'll run into like having to do manual command line analysis kind of things and using some of those command line kung fu that I love to say. Maybe not so much in the log analysis sense, but even just stuff we were doing today, right? Like extracting out and enumerating those services and being able to cut it up in a way and sort the unique values and sort of make it make sense and more digestible, especially for documentation. That kind of stuff is super interesting. So I would say get really comfortable using Linux and also PowerShell as well. PowerShell is pretty easy to learn the basic syntax kind of thing. A lot of it is kind of this verbiage of language that you can kind of get a hang on pretty quickly. How do you differentiate between normal and abnormal processes? Yeah, it can be tough, right? There's a lot of different things. Malware's always evolving. There are techniques like process injection, process hollowing that makes things a lot more difficult. The low-hanging fruit things are kind of, if you have calc.exe making network connections, that's not a good sign. So if you tie things to network, that's always a good start. But if you can't, which commonly you can't, you can look at things like where it's executing from. Again, there are some techniques that will get around that. You can look at the command line invocations. You can look at what is supposed to be normal and what's not normal. So again, servicehost.exe is a good example of that. So you can look at what its parent process is. It should be services. And if it's not, that's a bad day. And yeah, things like that. So again, I mentioned earlier, baselining is pretty hard. It's dependent entirely on your organization. But again, there are a lot of those core Windows processes and system components that should, in theory, always work together. These kind of like known truths, as it were. So there are kind of low-hanging fruit things like that. Otherwise, you're kind of correlating different things together. Maybe you're looking at logs on the endpoint. Maybe you're looking at, correlating that with processes or network connections or IDS alerts. So a lot of security controls kind of come together in an incident. It's usually not just isolated, like just having a memory capture. What can I use to understand assembly well? We might have something useful in store coming in the future, so I would keep an eye out for that. But yeah, I'm not. I'm really not good with assembly. Programming, like those low level languages in general, is not my forte. So, oh, good question. Can you explain the registry key? The last part got me confused. How the malware achieved persistence? Yeah. So what it did, if we go back to the actual report here from Mandiant, they did a good job on it. If we look under persistence, so there's some common persistence mechanisms that you'll find a lot of malware uses or likes to use. And it's just basically an abuse of actual Windows components, right? And if you, again, look in the SOC 101 course, we have a whole section on persistence and the different, mechanisms on Windows or Linux that attackers like to use. So things like registry, the run keys, installing services, many things like that. And a good example I was just thinking of is if you look at some of the courses from the red team perspective also cover how to persist well, and you can kind of take that from a blue team perspective and understand how it's being done. So that's why a lot of this stuff kind of came somewhat natural or easier to me when I was kind of getting the best of both worlds, trying to learn red team stuff and blue team stuff. I understand how attackers, how you actually exploit it from an attacker sense, and also how to detect it from, or how to enumerate and search for it from the blue team side. So in this case, we have that the malware is creating registry keys under the run keys in the registry to basically persist and run this task. So the run keys basically run when either the system or the user account logs in. So it's kind of like that auto start kind of thing, right, in the registry. So we have, in this case, under HKCU, or the current user, in that case, it was that hacker user. The registry entry was created under the run key, which basically runs this executable when the system starts up, and that user account logs in. There's also the run once, which is going to do the same thing on that user context, but only just run it once and then delete the entry. In this case, you have HKLM, or local machine, and so this is the same kind of thing. It'll run this executable whenever the system starts up, so it's not dependent on the user in the case of HKCU. So there's two common areas. So we have these two common hives that you'll find this in, and we also have the run and run once. There's a ton more, don't get me wrong, but again, these are the common ones that you'll see pretty often. And then also the other entry that we unfortunately couldn't find in that sample, it seems to have created a service called MSSec Service 2.0, and it ran, I guess, some kind of binary. It looks like that task SCHE. So that's kind of how it works. The auto run keys basically run when the computer or the user logs in. All right, my friends, I think that pretty much wraps it up. About an hour and a half today. Perfect timing. So thank you again for watching. Thank you for all the questions and engagement. Thank you for answering those questions when I posed them to the chat. That was a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to collaborate in that way. So again, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope to be back soon with some more blue team stuff. But of course, I think you guys also love Alex and Heath. They'll also be back soon. So thank you. Have a great rest of your day and week. And yeah, keep on defending, keep on hacking, do what you got to do, and enjoy.